What if a stranger died at your doorstep, and with his last breath gave you a wife, a secret, and a target on your back? And this isn't a love story. It's a warning. Garrett Thorne lived alone for 8 years. No neighbors, no trouble. Just the land, the cold, and the rhythm of chopping wood and staying forgotten. But that peace shattered the moment a horse collapsed outside his cabin, and a dying man gasped, "Take care of my wife. They'll kill her for what she knows." Garrett didn't see a woman, didn't see a second rider, just blood, panic, and a leather pouch shoved into his hand. "Don't let her open it," the man said. "Not until she's ready to tell you the truth." Then he died. And that's when the hoofbeats started. Somewhere out there, someone was coming fast. And Garrett, quiet, distant, ordinary Garrett, had just promised to protect a woman he'd never met from people who would burn the world to find her. And when she finally appeared, she wasn't what he expected. She was riding hard, eyes wild, hands steady, a rifle strapped to her saddle and no sign of fear in her voice. And when she looked at Garrett, she didn't ask for help. She asked how many men he could kill. This is the story of a loner who made a promise to a dying man and found himself standing between justice and revenge, love and survival. The axe had just met wood when Garrett Thorne heard it, the snap of a branch, the grunt of a collapsing horse, the unmistakable thud of a body hitting dirt. He dropped the axe and ran. The man lay face down in the dust blood, dark and wet across his back. His horse twitched beside him, ribs heaving, eyes rolling white. Garrett knelt fast, pressing a hand to the stranger's shoulder. The man turned his face slightly, mouth working, eyes clouded with pain. "Please," he rasped, voice like sand dragging across stone. "My wife, Celeste." Garrett blinked. Where the man's hand shot out, gripped Garrett's coat with a strength born from desperation. "Behind me." "Not far." "She's being followed." Blood bubbled at the corner of his lips. His breath came ragged, shallow. Garrett could already see the end rising behind his eyes. "Promise me," the man choked. "Protect her." Garrett hesitated. She's in danger." Because of what she knows. That made Garrett pause. Not how she looked, not who she was, but what she knew. The man pulled something from inside his coat, a small leather pouch. "Worn, tied with rawhide. Give this to her," he whispered. "But don't let her open it. Not until she trusts you." Garrett took it. It felt heavy, solid, something metallic inside. A key, a weapon. What's in it? But the stranger was gone. Just like that. Dead. Wind swept across the clearing, catching the hem of the man's coat and flinging dust into Garrett's eyes. And then hoofbeats, distant, but closing fast. Garrett stood slowly, eyes narrowing. Someone was coming hard across the canyon, and he had just inherited a dead man's wife, a secret he didn't understand, and a promise he had no business making. He looked at the pouch again, and that's when she rode in. From the west, fast, fierce, her horse kicking up dirt, her hair wild in the wind, her dress torn and stained red. She dismounted before the mare fully stopped, walked past Garrett like he wasn't there, dropped to her knees beside the body. "Is he dead?" she asked, calm as thunder. Garrett nodded. 10 minutes ago." She closed the man's eyes, whispered something in his ear, stood, and finally looked at Garrett. "Did he tell you about me?" "He said you were his wife. Said you needed protection." Celeste's jaw tightened. "What else?" Garrett glanced toward the pouch in his pocket. "That people want to hurt you. That you're dangerous." She let out a bitter laugh. Henry always had a flair for understatement. From the ridge, a cloud of dust curled into view. More riders. Fast. Celeste turned her eyes, scanning the terrain like a scout on the run. "How many can you handle, Mr. Thorne?" Garrett looked at the approaching storm and realized whatever was inside that pouch, it was about to change his life forever. She moved like someone who'd been chased too long to be afraid. Boots silent, eyes cutting through the distance, hands steady as stone. Celeste didn't look like a widow. She looked like war in a dress. Garrett watched her crouch beside the man Henry and touch his face like it still belonged to the living. Her fingers trembled for just a second. Then it was gone. Like she'd buried grief too many times to let it rise now. She stood, faced him square. You made a promise, she said flatly. Garrett nodded. Didn't have much choice. No one ever does. She brushed dirt from her skirt. They just live with it. Another gust of wind blew through the canyon, carrying the rumble of hoofbeats closer. They're coming, Garrett said. They never stopped. She walked to her horse, pulled a long rifle from its saddle like it was part of her arm. Checked the chamber. Slid it shut with a click that echoed too loud in the stillness. Garrett moved beside her. Who are they, Marshal Clayton Morse? And men who don't ask questions when the pay's good. Morse is federal used to be. She checked the son's position, eyes narrowing. Now he's muscle for Morrison's old network. Same men who put bribes in judges' pockets and bullets in anyone who got too close to the truth. Garrett felt the pouch in his coat like it was burning a hole through him. Henry said you were dangerous. She didn't flinch. I am. Silence. Then Garrett asked the question that had been clawing at him since she appeared through the dust. What's in the pouch? Celeste's jaw tightened. Everything they're willing to kill for. Names, dates, money trails. Morrison's ledger. Morrison's dead. That doesn't stop corruption. It just makes it harder to trace. The riders were now close enough to see the glint of rifles and the broad shoulders of men who'd broken too many things to ever be fixed. Celeste moved to the porch post, knelt behind it, rifle raised. You can leave, she said without looking. I'll buy you 10 minutes. Garrett shook his head. I don't run. She looked at him then. Not like a threat, not like a burden, like a chance. You sure about that? Garrett stepped behind the woodpile, hand on his lever action. No. But he stayed, because some men spend 8 years running from the world, and others decide it's time to fight for someone still worth believing in. The leather was stiff, weathered, oiled to survive the road, but cracked along the seams. Garrett held it between his fingers like it might bite. The pouch hadn't left his coat pocket since Henry died. But now, as the riders neared it, felt heavier. Like the truth inside it had weight. Celeste dropped beside him behind the water trough, breath-steady, rifle ready. You still have it? She asked without turning. He handed it to her. She took it slowly, hands firm. Familiar. Garrett expected her to open it. She didn't. Instead, she pressed it against her chest, just for a moment, like it was a prayer. Or a wound. Then she tucked it into her satchel. What's in it exactly? Garrett asked. Her green eyes flicked to as sharp as broken glass. Evidence. Of what? Of everything. She reached into her boot and pulled out a second piece of paper, folded, stained edges, frayed. Garrett glanced over. Names. Signatures. A line of numbers running next to court dates. Judges, marshals, deputies, all paid, all dirty. Morrison kept it, all she said. He was smart, arrogant. Thought no one could touch him, so he never hid the trail. And this proves it, she nodded. That ledger in the pouch, it's the real account. Personal notes, deals cut in back rooms, murders signed off with initials. Garrett blinked. And you were going to testify I did, she said quietly. They threw it out, said I was grieving, delusional, called me a liar in open court. And when I wouldn't shut up, they sent men like Morse. A shot cracked in the distance too far to be aimed at them, but close enough to remind both of them time was running out. Celeste slid the folded paper back into her boot. We give that pouch to the right person, this whole operation collapses. And if it ends up in the wrong hands, they burn every name inside it. And kill whoever brought it. Garrett looked at her. That why Henry was running, that she said. And because I wouldn't let them bury Thomas without fighting back. Thomas. She didn't answer. Not yet. The second shot hit the cabin wall. Splinters flew. Position, she said, gripping the rifle tighter. We hold them here. Garrett took a deep breath. Pulled his own rifle up beside him. The pouch sat in her bag between them. Not just a secret anymore. A target. They came slow. Deliberate. 5 men, 5 horses, and not a scrap of hesitation between them. Dust coiled around their boots like smoke off gunmetal. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. Their leader was tall, silver-haired Scar, running jaw to ear. He rode like a man born in the saddle and baptized in blood. Garrett didn't need an introduction. This was Clayton Morse, the one Celeste said used to wear a badge. and now worked for ghosts. The riders stopped 50 yards out, far enough to talk, close enough to shoot. Morse raised a hand. The others fanned out into a loose half-circle. Standard formation. Kill zone wide open. Afternoon friend Morse called, voice like dust over broken glass. Name's Clayton. We're tracking a woman. Green eyes, dark hair. She ride through here. Garrett stood just inside the shadow of the porch. Rifle loose in his grip. Not aimed. Not friendly. No woman here, he said. Morse smiled. But it wasn't a smile. It was a threat shaped like a mouth. That's so strange. See, we followed tracks to your door. 2 sets of prints. One's Henry Walsh. Other belongs to someone still breathing. Celeste crouched behind the trough, eyes locked on Morse's men. She didn't move. Barely breathed. She's not here, Garrett repeated. Another rider, tall, lean eyes, mean, shifted his horse. Finger brushed the trigger of a scoped rifle. Morse chuckled. Look, I don't want trouble. But that woman you're hiding? She's wanted. Murder. Federal charges. $5,000 for her, dead or alive. That's a lot of fence posts, friend. Garrett didn't move. I don't sell people. Don't be foolish, Morse warned. That woman's a killer. Shot a judge in his own courtroom. Put bullets in 2 deputies on her way out. Behind him, Celeste whispered, the judge was bought. They all were. Garrett's voice stayed even. What if she had a reason? Doesn't matter, Morse said. Courts decide guilt, not bullets. She was the court that day. Celeste growled, rising slowly into view, rifle aimed dead center on Morse's chest. All 5 men tensed. Fingers 2 triggers, eyes narrowing. And now it was Garrett's turn. He stepped off the porch, standing between her and them. She's not going anywhere, he said. And neither are you. The wind shifted. The air tightened. The next move would draw blood. Morse's eyes flicked between them, calculating. Then, I guess we stopped talking, he muttered, and the first bullet shattered the trough beside Celeste's head. The first shot tore through the trough like thunder, splintering wood and sending Celeste into the dirt. Garrett didn't hesitate. He dropped to one knee, leveled his rifle, and fired. The echo rolled across the canyon. One of Morse's men jerked back in the saddle, then toppled sideways, hitting the ground hard. 4 left. Morse shouted something, but the gunfire drowned it out. Bullets slammed into the porch post, the water barrel, the corner of the cabin wall. Wood split. Dust screamed. Celeste crawled to the far side of the trough, teeth-gritted rifle hugged tight to her chest. She popped up once, fired, and dropped again. Another rider's hat flew off. Close. Too close. They're not trying to kill us, she yelled. Not yet. Garrett ducked behind the chopping block. Could have fooled me. They want me alive. You not so much. A bullet skipped off a stone inches from his knee. She was right. And that scared him more than dying, because that meant they'd burn the whole place down just to flush her out. Smoke curled from the barn. One of the riders had tossed a firebomb. Flames licked up the dry timber fast, greedy and bright. Garrett's horses screamed from the corral. No, he started to rise, but Celeste yanked him back. Too late, she said. Her voice cracked. We can't save them. Garrett's heart slammed against his ribs as he watched 8 years of solitude go up in smoke. The barn collapsed with a groan. Embers drifted like fireflies across the yard. Another round of gunfire snapped them back. Celeste fired low, caught a rider in the thigh. He dropped screaming. 3 left. But one was Morse, and Morse hadn't fired a shot yet. He was waiting, watching, planning, and then Garrett saw it. One of the riders circling wide, making for the back of the cabin. They're trying to flank us, he shouted. Celeste spun, dropped flat, and sent a shot screaming into the dry brush. The flanker dove. Didn't come up again. Garrett ducked behind the porch rail chest, heaving. We can't hold them forever. We don't have to. Celeste reloaded fast, smooth. Henry sent word. Help's coming. When she checked the sun. Soon. He nodded, breath-catching. Then the main support beam cracked. Flames had reached the porch. The cabin was next. Garrett turned to Celeste. Time to move. She nodded once. To where Garrett pointed toward the ridge. High ground. That tree line. If we're gonna die, we do it looking them in the eyes. Smoke clawed at the sky. Flames chewed the porch steps behind them. The roof hissed, then crackled, ready to fall. "Go!" Garrett shouted, waving Celeste toward the ridge. But she didn't move. She stood in the open, rifle in her hands, dress singed at the hem, green eyes locked on the enemy like they owed her blood. I said, "Move." Celeste turned to him, voice sharp. "I've run enough, Garrett. I'm done." Bullets cracked the dirt near her boots, but she didn't flinch. "I ran when they killed Thomas. I ran when they torched our farm. I ran when no one listened, when every judge laughed in my face. But I will not run from these bastards. Not now. Not again." Garrett froze. Thomas. The name hit like a hammer. Her husband before Henry, the one who died for seeing too much. "You think I fight because I'm angry," she growled. "No, I fight because I remember what it felt like to have nothing. To stand in court while men in suits smirked and told me justice didn't come in my size." A shot tore past her shoulder, taking a piece of her sleeve. She didn't blink, just raised the rifle and returned fire, one smooth motion, one clean hit. A rider dropped hard, his scream swallowed by the fire. 2 left. Celeste reloaded with hands that didn't shake. Garrett moved beside her. "You shouldn't have to carry all of this alone." She looked at him. Really looked. Eyes softening beneath the soot and steel. Then stopped, standing behind me. Another explosion rocked the cabin. The roof caved in, sending embers sailing across the night like fireflies. The last piece of Garrett's old life crumbled in the glow. 8 years of solitude. Ash now. And still he didn't regret it. Because beside him stood a woman who'd survived more than most men could name. And she wasn't just standing, she was fighting. Celeste chambered another round. They want the pouch, the ledger. But what they really want, what men like Morse always want, is silence. And I am done being quiet. From the ridge, hoofbeats, not the enemy. Another group, moving fast. Celeste heard it too. Her head snapped toward the sound. Then she smiled, just barely. "Back up," she whispered. Right on time. The second group crested the ridge like a tide of justice on horseback. 10 riders. Fast, badges flashing in the firelight. Rifles drawn, faces grim. Garrett didn't know them, but Celeste did. "That's Marshal Davidson," she breathed. "The real law." Below, Morse cursed and spun his horse. "Fall back," he barked. His last rider turned to run, too late. A rifle cracked from the ridge, and the man tumbled from the saddle like a rag doll. The circle had closed. The trap had snapped shut. Davidson raised a hand. His voice boomed across the burning yard. "Federal Marshal Clayton Morse, by order of the territorial governor, you're under arrest." Morse snarled. "This is a setup." "No," Davidson said, riding forward. "This is reckoning." He dismounted slow, calm. Hand resting near his holster, eyes never leaving Morse. "We've been building this case for months." Morrison talked before he dropped dead. Sang like a church choir, named every man, every deal, every rigged trial. Garrett felt the pouch again, heavy in his pocket. Davidson turned to him. "You have it." Garrett nodded, pulled the leather pouch out and placed it in Davidson's outstretched hand. The marshal opened it with care. Inside the ledger, thick, bound in cracked leather, ink faded but legible. Davidson flipped a page, then another. "Dates, amounts, names," he muttered. "This ledger alone will bury a dozen men." Morrison wasn't just a crook. He was the center of a network. Morse's face twisted. "You can't prove I knew." Celeste stepped forward. He didn't just know. He enforced. He cleaned up when bribes weren't enough. "You're lying." "No," Davidson said, closing the ledger with a snap. "She's not." He looked to his deputies. "Take him." They moved fast. Morse reached for his gun, stupid. 2 shots rang out. One hit his arm, spinning him off his horse. The other missed his heart by inches. He hit the ground, screaming. Garrett stood frozen as Davidson knelt over him. "This ledger is worth more than your life," the marshal said. "And you tried to bury it in blood?" The air grew still. The fire behind them crackled lower, almost spent. Celeste turned to Garrett. Eyes tired, voice quiet. "It's over." "No," he said, watching the ashes drift skyward. "It just started." The fire died slow. What it didn't burn, it blackened. The barn gone. The supply shed cinders. The cabin collapsed inward like a man after losing everything he loved. Garrett stood in the ruins, boots in the soot, breathing in the scent of loss. Burnt pine, wet ash, something like memory. Behind him, the horses stirred restless. The new marshals tied Morse's hands with rawhide rope and threw him across a wagon like yesterday's garbage. His eyes no longer threatened. They pleaded. Celeste didn't watch. She stood over Henry's body, knees in the dust, whispering words that never rose above the wind. Her hand brushed his shoulder once. Then she rose. "He got justice," Garrett said. She nodded. But not peace. They didn't speak for a while. The air didn't ask for words. Davidson approached with 2 deputies and a wagon full of supplies. "Governor's orders," he said. "Compensation, tools, food, timber." Garrett nodded, eyes still locked on the smoldering wreckage. "Won't bring back what's lost?" "No," Davidson agreed. "But it's a start." He handed Celeste a folded parchment. She opened it, read it once. "A full pardon," she whispered, "signed and sealed." "You're free," Davidson said. "In every sense that matters." She didn't smile, just let the wind take the breath she hadn't released in years. When they rode off, Garrett and Celeste were alone again. This time not in silence, in aftermath. She turned to him. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For all of this." She gestured at the ruins. "You lost everything because of me." Garrett looked at the charred boards, the blackened porch, the place that had once been his whole world. "No," he said. "I lost what kept me alone." He stepped closer, looked her in the eyes, saw a woman who had been hunted, broken, blamed, but never beaten. "You have somewhere to go," Celeste shook her head. "I thought I did, but now I don't know." He hesitated. "Just a moment." "Then stay." She blinked. "As what?" "As Celeste," he said simply. "Not Henry's widow, not a fugitive. Just you." The wind kicked up a line of dust between them. Then she stepped over it and nodded. By morning, the air was still. No gunfire, no hoofbeats, just the low crackle of dying embers and the soft creak of timber cooling in ash. Garrett stood at the edge of what used to be his porch, a mug of bitter coffee in one hand, the other resting on a post that no longer held up anything. Smoke curled around his boots. The land stretched quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet. Celeste walked out of what was left of the shed sleeves, rolled hair tied back. Dirt on her cheek hammer in one hand, a list in the other. "We've got 6 beams that didn't burn clean. Might be usable." Garrett took a sip. "That enough for a wall?" "Half a wall," she said. "Maybe less if we wanted to stand in the wind." They shared a look, the kind of look you don't share with strangers or ghosts. A week ago, he didn't know her name. Now he was rebuilding his life, with her hands in the dirt beside his. "We'll need more timber," he said. "I know a sawmill 2 days south. Reliable. Fair." "I'll ride with you," she said. No hesitation. "Thought you might want to rest." Celeste looked around the scorched earth, the broken fence, the hollow where the barn used to be. "This is rest," she said. "For the first time in years, I'm not running." Garrett nodded. They didn't talk about the kiss that hadn't happened, about the fire they stood through, about the man she lost or the 8 years he buried himself in silence. But something unspoken passed between them with every nail, every measured board, every shared meal scraped together from what little they had left. That night they sat on a makeshift bench, just 2 planks stacked across 2 stones, watching stars scatter across the black. She leaned her shoulder into his. "I keep thinking he's going to walk up that hill," she said. "Henry." Smile like he always did when the fire was right and the danger past. Garrett didn't say a word, just reached for her hand. And for the first time, she let him hold it. No promises, no labels, just a grip strong enough to carry weight. Next, just Garrett and Celeste. 2 souls with broken pasts, 1 house to raise and a future that begins not. The new cabin wasn't much. 4 walls, a roof that still leaked when the wind howled. No porch yet, no glass in the windows. But the beams were straight, the doors swung clean, and there was room enough for 2 chairs by the fire. Garrett stood in the doorway, watching Celeste sweep sawdust from the floor. She wore one of his old shirt sleeves, rolled hair loose. The morning light caught the gold in her eyes. "You ever think we'd get here?" he asked. She didn't look up. "No." then added softer, "Not alive." He nodded. Silence stretched between them, comfortable now, the kind built from shared bruises and burned fences. Outside, the land breathed steady again. The scars hadn't vanished, but they'd settled. Garrett stepped in, set down a sack of nails beside her. Porch next. Celeste leaned on the broom. Porch next. They smiled. Small, real. That night they sat side by side under a roof, and they built themselves, listening to the night like it was a story they hadn't finished reading. Celeste sipped coffee. Garrett watched the stars. Her hand found his again. No words, because sometimes healing doesn't come with vows or endings. Sometimes it just means not walking away. If someone handed you a secret that could bring down everything, would you protect the truth, even if it meant burning your life to the ground? Tell us in the comments. Would you choose justice or peace? If you felt something in this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales where truth rides with a loaded gun and healing begins with the people who stay.